All right, so uh, let's dive into this pretty massive thing. The 2025 National Defense Authorization Act. You know, that yearly bill
Yeah.
that sets the budget and policies for the entire U.S. Department of Defense. This year's is a behemoth. It covers everything, from military personnel to cutting-edge tech.
Oh,
It's
wow.
so big, no one could realistically read it all. So that's where we come in. We've
Right.
gone through it all to bring you the most interesting and important parts.
It's really fascinating how this act serves as a roadmap for the U.S. military's future. It reveals their priorities
Mm-hmm.
and how they're planning to address emerging challenges.
Right. And there's a lot to unpack here. Let's start with the human side of things. The service members themselves. This NDAA has a whole section on personnel matters, and some of the changes are pretty significant. For example, they're removing the active duty service requirement for warrant officer appointments.
In the Air Force and Space Force.
That's a big shift. Could this be a sign that they're facing a shortage of people
Yeah.
with those specific skills they need in the Air Force and Space Force?
Maybe they're trying to attract expertise from outside the traditional military career path.
Interesting point. It does make you wonder, what's driving that change? And speaking of skills, the NDAA also puts a big emphasis on financial literacy training for service members. I'm curious, what are the potential consequences if service members lack financial literacy?
Well, think about it. Many service members join right out of high school. They might not have a strong understanding of managing money. This could lead to debt, financial stress, and even security vulnerabilities if they become susceptible to predatory lending or scams. All of that can impact their readiness and well-being.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not something you might immediately think of
Yeah.
as a priority, but it's clearly important now. They're also expanding JROTC programs, bringing them to Job Corps, and even starting a waiting list
Yeah.
because the demand is so high.
This is a fascinating development. The military seems to be looking at a wider range of potential recruits and investing in programs that build leadership skills and discipline early on. It could be a way to address future recruitment challenges
Yeah.
and diversify the force.
And it's not just attracting new recruits, it's also about retaining the experienced ones. There are several provisions aimed at talent management and personnel retention.
One that stands out
Mm-hmm.
is the exclusion of the Marine Corps medical officer from active duty strength limitations. This suggests they're prioritizing keeping top medical talent within the Marines, recognizing how crucial it is to have a healthy and ready force.
Absolutely. And on the topic of health, there are some notable changes to the basic needs allowance.
The NDAA expands eligibility for this allowance, which helps service members struggling with food insecurity and increases the amount. It acknowledges that some military families face real financial challenges and aims to provide a safety net.
That's a positive step. And there's another program that highlights how military culture is changing. The one focused on preventing perinatal mental health conditions. They're specifically supporting pregnant and postpartum service members and their spouses.
This is a really important shift. It recognizes the unique challenges of this period and provides resources to address them directly. It's a clear message that mental health is as crucial as physical health, and that the military is committed to supporting families throughout their service.
I couldn't agree more. And finally, some great news for military spouses: permanent authority for interstate compacts that make occupational licenses portable.
This is a potential game changer for military spouses, who often have to relicense every time they move. This removes a major barrier, letting them maintain their careers. That's not only good for families, but also for the overall readiness of the force.
So a lot of focus on taking care of the people in the military, but the NDAA also dives into the world of military technology with things like artificial intelligence and hypersonic weapons taking center stage.
And that's where it gets really interesting. This NDAA shows a clear commitment to staying ahead of the curve in a rapidly changing technological landscape.
Let's start with AIs, because there's so much packed into this NDAA about it. It seems like they're weaving AI into every aspect of military operations.
Absolutely. For example, the NDAA authorizes using AI to optimize workflow in places, like shipyards and depots. Imagine AI systems streamlining tasks, like maintenance and logistics, improving efficiency and potentially reducing costs.
Okay, but what about the potential downsides? Could over-reliance on AI make systems vulnerable to hacking or malfunctions, especially in critical areas like weapon systems?
That's a valid concern. The NDAA acknowledges the need for safeguards. It mandates the creation of an artificial intelligence security center to promote secure AI adoption practices and to assess the risks and benefits of AI. In the broader context of national security, they're establishing a National Security Commission on emerging biotechnology.
So they're not just rushing into AI adoption, they're trying to be responsible about it.
Exactly. And the pilot program. To see if AI-enabled software can handle other workflow and operations tasks is another example of their cautious approach. They're testing the waters before diving all in.
Now, AI isn't the only frontier they're exploring. They're also investing heavily in quantum information science.
This field has the potential to revolutionize warfare. Imagine quantum computers breaking the encryption. That protects our most sensitive data, giving a nation a decisive military advantage. Or quantum sensors detecting submarines at unprecedented ranges.
Wow, that sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. So it's not just about faster computers, it's about entirely new capabilities.
That's right. And the NDAA highlights the need for the U.S. to lead in this field, to maintain its strategic advantage.
Okay, so AI and quantum information science, definitely game changers. But there's another technological development that's been making headlines: hypersonic weapons.
These weapons travel at incredibly high speeds, at least 5 times the speed of sound. And their maneuverability makes them extremely difficult to defend against. They represent a significant challenge to traditional defense systems.
And the NDAA emphasizes the need for hypersonic defense capabilities.
It's a clear sign that they're taking this threat seriously. The NDAA allocates funding for research and development to counter hypersonic weapons and protect U.S. interests. It's a high-stakes race to develop both offensive and defensive capabilities in this rapidly evolving field.
And let's not forget about unmanned systems. The NDAA includes provisions for countering unmanned aerial systems, drones, which are becoming increasingly prominent in conflicts worldwide.
Drone technology is rapidly advancing, and the NDAA addresses the need for effective countermeasures. It also mentions developing large, unmanned underwater vehicles, essentially underwater drones, which could have a wide range of applications, from intelligence gathering to mine countermeasures.
So the NDAA is pushing the boundaries of military technology on land, in the air, underwater, and in cyberspace. It's like a constant race to adapt and stay ahead of the curve.
And that's just one aspect of this massive document. The NDAA also lays out how the U.S. will engage with the rest of the world, tackling alliances, partnerships, and potential adversaries. It's a roadmap for navigating the complex geopolitical landscape.
Let's talk about that roadmap, particularly as it relates to a region that's becoming increasingly important: the Arctic. The NDAA mandates a report on the resources needed to implement the Department of Defense's Arctic strategy.
With the melting of sea ice opening up, new shipping routes, and access to natural resources, competition among nations, including Russia and China, is heating up.
Oh, wow.
The U.S. wants to ensure it's prepared to protect its interests and maintain a presence in this strategically important region.
So it's not just about the cold, it's about the geopolitical heat that's building up in the Arctic.
Exactly. And this leads us to another key focus of the NDAA, China. We'll delve deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. We left off talking about the Arctic and how that's becoming a more important strategic region. But there's another major player that features heavily in this NDAA: China.
This NDAA definitely reflects a growing sense of competition between the U.S. and China. There are numerous provisions aimed at countering China's influence and bolstering the U.S. military's position. In the Indo-Pacific,
one provision that stood out to me is the requirement for a report on China's efforts to evade U.S. transparency and national security regulations. What's the thinking behind that?
the U.S. is concerned about China's lack of transparency, its aggressive military modernization, and its efforts to acquire sensitive technology, sometimes through questionable means. This report is about shedding light on those activities, making it harder for China to operate in the shadows.
So it's about increasing accountability and maybe even creating some pressure for change. The NDAA also includes provisions about the production of fentanyl precursor chemicals coming from China.
This is a huge issue, not just for the U.S., but globally. China is a major source of the chemicals used to make fentanyl, a synthetic opioid that's driving a deadly overdose crisis. These provisions aim to disrupt the illicit production and trafficking of these chemicals.
It's a complex problem, and it sounds like the NDAA is taking a multi-pronged approach. But it's not all about countering China. The NDAA also talks about building partnerships with like-minded nations in the region.
One example is the emphasis on strengthening the quadrilateral security dialogue, better known as the Quad. This partnership between the U.S., Japan, Australia, and India is seen as a way to counter China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific.
For those who might not be familiar, could you unpack the Quad a bit more? What are their goals?
The Quad is about promoting a free and open Indo-Pacific region based on a rules-based international order. They cooperate on maritime security, cybersecurity, and emerging technologies. It's not about containing China, but about upholding a system where all countries can operate freely and fairly.
It sounds like they're trying to create a network of strong, collaborative relationships as a counterbalance to China's growing power.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And the NDAA also mentions trilateral defense cooperation between the U.S., Japan, and South Korea.
What makes that particular partnership so important?
It's crucial for stability in Northeast Asia. It acts as a deterrent against North Korean aggression and provides a counterweight to China's military presence in the region. The NDAA talks about them working together on ballistic missile defense, maritime security, information sharing, and even disaster relief.
So it's a very comprehensive approach to security cooperation, recognizing that threats can come from multiple directions and require multifaceted solutions.
Exactly. And this brings us back to the investments in cutting-edge technology we discussed earlier. For example, the large unmanned surface vessels that are being developed could be real game changers for maritime security in the Indo-Pacific.
You mentioned those before. Can you paint a picture of what these vessels are and why they're so significant?
Imagine autonomous ships, bristling with sensors and weapon systems, patrolling vast stretches of ocean. For extended periods, they could provide constant surveillance, deter potential adversaries, and even engage in combat if necessary.
Wow, that does sound like a significant leap forward. In naval capabilities, it seems like the NDAA is really focused on modernizing the military to face these evolving challenges in the Indo-Pacific region.
Absolutely. But it's not just about hardware and military might. The NDAA also delves into some really crucial but less talked about issues that impact national security.
I'm always fascinated by those hidden gems. What have you unearthed in this NDAA?
One that really caught my eye is the focus on software acquisition reform. The NDAA pushes for faster, more adaptable processes for acquiring software, recognizing that the traditional way of doing things just isn't working in today's digital world.
That makes a lot of sense. Software updates constantly on our phones and computers. The military can't afford to be stuck with outdated software, especially when cyber warfare is a constant threat.
Exactly. They need to be agile
Yeah.
and responsive. And speaking of cyber, the NDAA also directs the Department of Defense to create a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy for weapon systems.
That's got to be a top priority. The consequences of a cyber attack on critical weapon systems could be catastrophic.
Absolutely. And it's not just about external attacks. The NDAA also addresses the need to ensure the integrity of the software supply chain, recognizing that vulnerabilities can be introduced at any point in the development process.
So it's about building security into these systems
Right.
from the ground up, making sure they're resilient to threats from both inside and out.
That's right. It's a holistic approach to cybersecurity, recognizing that it's not just an IT issue. It's a national security imperative.
And we're seeing how AI is being applied in all sorts of unexpected ways. There's a provision in the NDAA that requires a report on using AI to predict maintenance needs for military equipment.
It's about AI systems, analyzing data from sensors on aircraft, ships, and tanks. They could identify potential problems before they cause failures, allowing for proactive maintenance.
That would be huge. No more waiting for something to break down
Yeah.
before fixing it. That could save time, money, and potentially even lives.
Exactly. It's about moving from reactive maintenance
Mm.
to predictive maintenance, thanks to the power of AI.
And on the topic of saving lives, the NDAA also addresses medical readiness. There's a provision requiring a comprehensive strategy for improving access to safe blood products for service members in combat zones.
Access to blood transfusions is often the difference between life and death on the battlefield. This strategy will ensure the military has the infrastructure and resources to get those vital blood products to those who need them, even in the most challenging environments.
It's a reminder that even with all the advances in military technology, the fundamentals of medical care remain essential.
And the NDAA doesn't stop there. It also includes funding for research into new medical technologies, things like freeze-dried plasma and portable blood storage devices, which could be revolutionary for battlefield medicine.
These innovations could dramatically improve the ability to provide life-saving care in the field, even in the most austere conditions. This NDAA really dives deep into all aspects of military preparedness, from the front lines to the research labs.
It does. And it also looks at the well-being of military families, recognizing the vital role they play in the overall strength and readiness of the force.
What are some of the provisions that address the needs of military families.
One that's really innovative is the pilot program to assess using virtual reality for mental health care for service members
Mhm.
and their families.
That sounds intriguing. How would virtual reality be used in that context?
Imagine VR simulations. That could help service members cope with PTSD, anxiety, or depression. It could create a safe, immersive environment for them to work through their challenges, practice coping mechanisms, and even connect with therapists remotely.
That could be incredibly valuable, especially for those stationed in remote locations or who face barriers to accessing traditional mental health care.
Exactly. It's a creative use of technology
Hmm.
to address a critical need and highlights the military's commitment to the well-being of its personnel and their families.
And it's not just about taking care of its own people. The NDAA also grapples with broader global challenges like climate change.
Right. There's a provision establishing a commission to study the national security implications of climate change, recognizing that it's a threat multiplier.
They'll be looking at everything from the impact of rising sea levels on coastal military installations to the potential for climate-induced migration to spark new conflicts.
It's a recognition that climate change poses significant risks to national security, and the U.S. military needs to be prepared to address those challenges.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the 2025 NDAA, from cutting-edge technologies to global strategy, from personnel policies to the well-being of military families, and even the looming challenges of climate change.
And we're not finished yet. There's still more to unpack in this massive document, so stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the 2025 NDAA. We've already covered a lot, from AI-powered warships to the challenges of climate change. But this document is so expensive. There are always more fascinating details to uncover.
It's true. The NDAA is a window into the future of the U.S. military. And some of the provisions might seem small on the surface, but reveal a lot about their evolving priorities and the challenges they anticipate.
All right, let's unearth some of those hidden gems. What else has caught your eye in this massive document?
Well, there's a provision that stood out to me. Regarding nuclear weapons, the NDAA authorizes funding for the Ground-Based Strategic Deterrent, which is a new intercontinental ballistic missile system set to replace the aging Minuteman III missiles.
That's a major upgrade. That's been in the works for quite some time. What are the implications of this shift?
The GBSD is designed for greater reliability, accuracy, and survivability than the Minuteman III. It's a significant investment in maintaining a credible nuclear deterrent, which remains a cornerstone of U.S. national security strategy.
It's a reminder that in this era of rapidly evolving technologies and geopolitical shifts, nuclear deterrence is still a major factor in global power dynamics.
Absolutely. And the NDAA also allocates funding for the B-21 Raider, the Air Force's new long-range stealth bomber.
That's another major modernization program. What makes the B-21 so important?
It's designed to penetrate sophisticated enemy air defenses
Hmm.
and can carry both conventional and nuclear weapons. It's a versatile and formidable asset that will enhance the U.S. military's ability to project power and deter potential adversaries.
So the NDAA is investing in both the modernization of the nuclear arsenal and the development of new conventional capabilities. It's a two-pronged approach to maintaining military superiority in a rapidly changing world.
And it's not just about the weapons themselves. The NDAA also addresses the infrastructure and personnel needed to support these sophisticated systems. There are provisions for upgrading nuclear command and control systems, modernizing facilities, and training the next generation of nuclear experts. It's a holistic approach to ensuring the safety, security, and effectiveness of the U.S. nuclear arsenal.
It's a complex issue with significant ethical and strategic implications. This NDAA highlights the ongoing debate about the role of nuclear weapons. In the 21st century,
Indeed. Now, shifting gears a bit, I wanted to talk about another fascinating aspect of the NDAA. Its focus on space.
that's a hot topic these days. What's the NDAA doing in this area?
It recognizes that space is becoming increasingly contested,
Yep.
and that the U.S. needs to maintain its advantage in this domain. The NDAA includes provisions for developing new space-based capabilities, enhancing space situational awareness, and strengthening partnerships with allies in space.
So it's not just about rockets and satellites. It's about developing a comprehensive strategy for space, encompassing everything from defense to exploration to collaboration.
Exactly. The NDAA calls for the establishment of a Space National Guard to address the growing need for space-focused military personnel. It also emphasizes the importance of protecting critical space infrastructure from potential threats, including cyber attacks and anti-satellite weapons.
It's a reminder that space is not just a scientific frontier, but also a critical domain for national security.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up our deep dive into the 2025 NDAA, it's clear that this document is about far more than just dollars and cents. It's a blueprint for how the U.S. military is adapting to a world of accelerating technological change, intensifying geopolitical competition, and evolving threats.
It's been a fascinating journey. Exploring this massive document, we've delved into cutting-edge technologies, global strategic shifts, the changing needs of service members and their families, and even the potential implications of climate change.
This NDAA highlights the immense complexity, the challenges facing the U.S. military in the 21st century. It underscores the need for strategic thinking, technological innovation, and a deep understanding of the interconnected nature of global security.
It's a reminder that the decisions made in this document will have far-reaching consequences, not just for the U.S. military, but for the world as a whole.
So as you continue to follow the news and engage in discussions about national security, remember the insights we've gleaned from our deep dive into the 2025 NDAA.
Ask questions, stay informed, and be part of the conversation about the choices that will shape our future.
And on that note, we'll conclude this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act.